big push to be international.
Right, right.
Good.
Yeah. And they're good.
You heading
Great.
They're good. Say?
Yeah,
What part?
Mumbai.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Good evening.
Hello.
The only thing that can be found is this present energy field, that you may call it your experience. Nothing else can be found. And everything that you may think exists is a hypothesis based on the presence of this energy field. Calling it an energy field is arbitrary. You call it the experiential field, call it whatever you want. This that is here, this, right? It's the only thing that is findable. Nothing can be found other than it. Nothing can be found outside it. And nothing can be found for you other than your experiential field. You can't know whether or not I'm experiencing anything. You can theorize it, perhaps I am, but you can't know that directly. The only thing, and of course I'm not trying to brainwash you. I'm just suggesting you look for yourself and explore this and see if whether or not this is the case. So this field of experiencing exists. Here it is. Can you know what it is? Can you know how it works? Can you know what it's made of? Can you know where it is? I mean, it's here, but it kind of defines here. It makes its own here. When you're driving in your car, then that's where here is. When you're home and in your bed, that's where here is. When you're here in this room, that's where here is. So here comes with the presence of this experiential field. All this is very self-evident. Of course, it's completely obvious, and we all know it. It's a no-brainer. It's completely intuitively self-evident that this is so. What's not self-evident is that nothing other than this is so. And that's where people run into problems. The idea that your experiential field exists is self-evident. The idea that anything else exists is where you run into troubles, where you run into complication and confusion. So here this is, great. And what do you know about it? Zip. What's it made of? Who knows? Where is it? Who knows? How does it work? Who knows? What does it have parts? Who knows? Does it not have parts? Who knows? Are there other entities? Are there things? Who knows? Are there not things? Who knows? None of these questions are answerable. But as if you're a typical human being, you probably think that you can answer them. You probably have an answer that you're quite convinced is true and self-evidently true, and you just hold it to be that way. You sit in it as that, which is fine, and this is the normal human condition. So, apparently, so there's no problem with that. It's just not true. And because it's not true, it can potentially get you into trouble. If you orient to this, expecting it to conform to your expectations of what you think it is, sooner or later you're going to hit a disjunction. Sooner or later, things are not going to work out the way you expected or the way you planned it or the way you wanted it. Because the actuality, what it is and the way it works and what it consists of, will deviate from your idea, from your certainty of what it consists of. And more fundamentally, from the spiritual point of view, our ideas of what things are, ideas of what this is and how it works, by their very nature are limited. They're small, they're finite, they're concrete. This is this and that's the other, and you can tell them apart. Whereas the nature of this actuality, the experiential field, is that it's infinite and unknown. It's a bottomless mystery. It's a literal infinity. So by holding it, by thinking you know what everything is, which is a normal human mindset perhaps, you cut yourself off from the direct experience, the certain experiential access to the open-ended infinity that this actually is. Which again is not a problem because it actually is that, so you aren't actually cut off from anything. It's all very paradoxical. But in terms of how you feel, in terms of what you feel like, in terms of what you allow yourself to access, or the perspective within which you seem to sit, the perspective within which you seem to exist, and what you seem to be, and what your limitations are, and what your potentialities are, the implication is one of sort of a small, limited closedness of, the horror of human normalcy. Me and my sucky life, and you struggle along, and things work out a little bit, kind of, and kind of a lot not. And you go along and you try and do the best you can, and sometimes you do okay, and sometimes maybe not so much. And life sucks, and then you die. But that's not actually happening. There is no sucking, there is no life, and in fact, there's not even any dying. But you'll find that out for yourself when the time comes. And all of this is discoverable very directly by simply noticing what is actually here, and the way it works, and the way it deviates drastically from what we typically hold it to be, and the way we typically hold it to work. For example, this is just a few very arbitrary, partial aspects of this. For example, only the present moment exists. Now, this is kind of self-evident, only the present moment exists. But really feel it, this present moment, this instant, it has zero duration. It's not like the present moment is here and it's kind of lasts a minute or a second or half a second. It's faster than fast. As soon as it is, it's already gone. I mean, if you watch a second hand on a clock moving, and you watch when it hits 12, how long is it at 12? I mean, second hands move fast, but they don't move that fast. I mean, it's not like you're watching a bullet or something. So the second hand moves, it's not at 12, it's not at 12, it's not at 12, it's not at... You can't even say or think when it's at 12 because it's already past 12. Or you can jump the gun and say, oh, it's at 12, just to have time to get it out. But you can't do it because it's at 12 for zero time. And yet it's only exactly where it is now. Where is it now? Here, now, just like this. But it's already gone. As soon as it is in any particular condition, it's already gone. Zero duration. Well, that feels interesting, isn't it? I mean, all of a sudden, right there, just feeling what does your world feel like is a kind of a lightness, a kind of a weirdness to it. I mean, it's like, golly, this is kind of trippy. This is kind of fun. And then you can look at the absolute inconstancy of phenomena. Every single thing is present only for an instant in that configuration. And it's never been that way before, and it's never going to be that way again. For example, what you're seeing right now in your field of vision, you've never seen before. Exactly that configuration of colors and lights, and it's already gone. In fact, it was gone before I was done snapping my fingers. You may say, well, now things change. All these pictures are still hanging there. Well, that's true as an abstraction. But if you look at the concrete fact of your experience, a concrete fact of your perception, you'll notice everything is fluctuating with inconceivable rapidity. And it never repeats. You can try, many times I've said this, you can try an experiment. Sit before a blank wall or a blank expanse of color without any particular thing going on, and just look at it for 5 minutes. And the simple notion is, well, it's just a wall, it's just sitting there, that's pretty boring. And yeah, it may be pretty boring in a sense. But if you actually do the experiment, if you actually sit and look at the wall, within about 30 seconds, you'll wonder where the wall went, because there's going to be all this flickering and little jumps and little glimmers and all of this stuff. And it just gets more and more and more that way, you know, if you just look steadily at it. And all of your, you know, I'm talking about field of vision now, but this applies across the board in terms of the experiential field. And all of your experience is just like this. And if it's always like that, how come we don't notice it? We don't notice it because your focus of attention is like a butterfly. You're looking here, looking there, and looking here. And you don't actually look at anything long enough to watch it change, to watch it fluctuate. You're already dancing around in terms of, again, in terms of vision, but in terms of all the other senses as well. They light on this and that and this and that. And because you're just taking little snapshots, it's easy to pretend it's all coherent, it's all stable and solid, and just sitting there and not changing. Because you hold that in your imagination. There's no evidence to counter that. But if you actually sit and look at the way experience actually happens, you discover an astounding subtle dynamism, and not so subtle dynamism as well. And perhaps the most interesting characteristic of experience is it's unresolvable. You can't tell exactly what anything is. And this is very counterintuitive if you're just thinking superficially. You know, think, well, of course things are what they are, you know. Take color, you know, this carpet is the color that it is, you know, and it's that color, and this rug is the color that it is, you know. But is it really? What color is it precisely? And you can look at it. First of all, you look at it and you notice right away, well, every single portion of it is a slightly different shade from every other portion. And as you look at it, it's all fluctuating and breathing anyway, if you let yourself just gaze at it for a while without letting your eyes move. And then, you know, exactly what color is it? Is it this color? Is it that color? Does it stay the same? It doesn't even stay the same, you know, but you'll notice, after a while, if you really explore this kind of stuff, you'll think someone dosed you with a psychedelic or something, because you'll just notice your experience is fluctuating wildly. And it's not like the rug has changed color necessarily, but you can't pin it down precisely what it is. And the same thing applies to shape. The same thing applies to texture. You know, exactly what does it feel like to rub your fingers together? Well, it feels like my fingers rubbing together. Everyone knows that. But if you do that experiment, if you just sit and rub your fingers for a while, you know, what is it? What's happening there? It turns in, it's this weird, you know, at first you picture your fingers and they're rubbing, and if you just sort of do it out of your field of vision, it becomes this weird sort of a tingling and buzzing, and it turns into a kind of a flickering, and it can spin off into all kinds of little flashes of light, I mean, whatever. But the point is that it's not like the closer you look at it, the simpler it becomes and the duller it becomes. On the contrary, the closer you look at it, the stranger it becomes, and the more you tend to sort of go off from what you thought you were starting with. And this is intrinsic to the nature of experience yourself. And I invite you to play with this if you find it interesting. So the point of all this, in very simple terms, is that experience, reality, this that is here, this presence, this actuality, is wildly different than you may have imagined, than you can imagine, because what it is unimaginable. It's literally unthinkable, because you cannot resolve, you cannot pin down what it is and how it works with finite concepts. And concepts are all essentially finite. They're all defined by their definition. And nothing in actuality, nothing in this experiential field is definable, because it's this infinite density of information, this infinite density of possibility and unresolvability in all the range of qualities that present themselves. So that's a sort of an overview of what I have to present. And naturally, it has many, many subtleties and implications, which I'll be glad to discuss with you if you're interested.
So
A while ago, you said to me that I could notice people's energies, right? Or just how I feel from the person just looking at them. And could you talk more about how that looks? It's different. I don't know. I guess it's comparable in a way to looking at a blank wall and then noticing the variety of things there, right?
Maybe I would say it's much more immediate than that. You know, it's a flavor, it's a hit. You know, you look at, I mean, just superficially, you look at someone, and right, there's different flavors. It's like tasting chocolate and then tasting gin and then tasting, you know, salt. It's like whoa, you know, you get whole different flavors. That's very, to me, it's very obvious, and even heavy-handed. But you know, again, in terms of the subtlety of the range of the ways that can be explored, there's no limit. As with any experience, it's open-ended and bottomless. And it's not particularly important. I was using that just as an example of, you know, the advantage of doing something like that is, in terms of consensus human reality, it's impossible. It's absurd. You know, it's like, oh, psychic phenomena, you know. Well, this is the Bay Area, so it's probably more mainstream than I'm thinking. But anyway, you know, it's like read someone's aura, feel someone's energy, you know. And I find it very, very easy to do, and extremely obvious, in fact, once you tune into it. And the point of it isn't that that's an important thing to do in itself. The point of it is that can open your eyes to sort of nonlinear and non-conventional aspects of the way experience presents. Any and all experience presents with a barrage of flavors. This is the basis of art. You know, you take any, like, again, I'm using the visual field as an example, but this is completely arbitrary. You take any color in any shape, in any size, and it's got a flavor. You know, a red star on a blue background done with a kind of a squiggle. It's got a flavor. It's like a whole symphony right there. You know, or anything, and it's all different. You know, every picture in this room, you look at it and right away you get a different flavor. I mean, you know, it's not like you can't say what the flavor is. You know, it's like trying to describe what does chocolate taste like. Well, it tastes like chocolate, but you can't say what that is. So what is the flavor of this picture? What's it feel like when you look at it? And how's it feel different than this picture? How's it feel? And it's not a matter of trying to collapse that down to a finite description. It's a matter, on the contrary, of letting yourself open to the richness that the experience intrinsically consists of. It's like training yourself in sensitivity to the amazing richness and range and dynamism of what is present. Let's just look around. Every picture in this room it's like a song. It's like a poem, you know, and each one has a very different flavor. It's, you know, and to me, I would say it's not even subtle. It's pretty obvious. And you know, and again, that's just an arbitrary example. It applies to every flash of light. Is different, has a different flavor. You know, so your experiential field is this incredible stew of flavors, of sort of qualities, of vibes, of tastes, of well, flavors is a good word. You know, experiential characteristics, and there's no limit to how different it is and how rich it is. So if you're with any portion of your experience and any other portion of your experience, even if it's seemingly right next to it, it's different. All the way, with a different flavor and a different implication, and just a whole different sort of a world it takes you to when you let yourself just sort of go into it. And this is endless. It's limitless, and there's no end. You go into one of these flavors, and it opens to other subtleties, and you go into any of those, and that opens to more subtleties, and it's just forever and ever opening, without any bottom, without any end. That's what infinite means. It means you never hit a bottom or an end. You never get anywhere. It's just you just get to. It's like you walk through a door that leads to another door, and you walk through that door, and it leads to another door, and all there is doors. The fantasy that they actually get anywhere is just that, a fantasy.
So the problem is that the habit of just seeing so far and then assigning some sort of interpretation or meaning.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that sort of closes it down as that, and you sort of check it off your list, and then you think you know what it is. And at that point, you're no longer open to what the experience actually is. You've collapsed it down to a stereotype of it, a caricature, and that's what you're looking at.
And we just do that to feel safe?
Well, who knows? It's the nature of human psychology to tend to do that. And there's not really a problem in doing that. I mean, as we all know, that's what most people do. But the point is that you don't actually have to do that. Well, let me get more subtle with it. You can't stop doing that. But you can see that you're doing it, and you can see that when you do that, it doesn't change or limit the actual experience. So it's like a coexistence of two dimensions. The one dimension that is naming everything and categorizing it and shutting it down to knowing what it is. And then the actuality of experience, which is an open infinity, which is always present. It's never closed. In other words, your open-ended experience is always here. It's always available. No matter how caught up you are in interpretive frameworks and thinking you know what things are, the open-ended infinity is always here, which is what makes the yoga so easy, because the evidence the evidence that counters your small defining characteristic is always present if you take the trouble to look. So this is the point, is to simply notice that. Notice the fact, to notice the nature of experience, that experience itself is infinite, is open-ended. It intrinsically is that. You don't need to make it that, or turn it into that, or do something special to make something happen. Just notice that it happens to be the case that that's just the way it is. And that's what you are, because you know, we haven't really talked about this evening, but one of the interesting things we collapse down is our idea of ourselves. You know, you think of yourself, and you think of, you may, I don't know, you may have a very complex, subtle vision of yourself, of your body and your personality and your history and your potentialities and your talents and your strengths and your limitations and, you know, whatever you love, what you love and what you hate and blah, 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 blah. And so all that's pure fantasy. Because when you go looking for you, all you find is this. The real you is the totality of your experiential feeling. And again, you can prove that by doing the math. You prove that by looking, try to find yourself, try to find who you are, try to, well, what exactly am I? You know, and you always end up with the experiential feeling, because that's the only thing that's actually here. You have to end up with that, or you're just lost in fantasy, which paradoxically is also the experiential feeling.
It seems like there's a real utility to closing things down to a certain extent.
In what sense?
Well, maybe it's just because I'm used to it.
I mean, that's the fantasy, is how would I be able to drive if I was with infinity? How would I be able to walk? How would I be able to talk?
Across the street, yeah.
But the fantasy that functioning comes from defining is not true. For example, I'm talking right now, obviously, I'm speaking. How am I doing that? I could not possibly tell you how I talk. Talking is not a process of a linear logic that I have to assemble or structure in my mind beforehand so that I can, you know, line up the ducks in a row and make it happen. It's just something that I can do. It's a transcendental functionality that just seems to be present. You know, I can breathe, my heart's beating. How does that happen? You know, is that logical? Do I have to do that? Do I have to be defining something to do that? How do I drive a car? You don't drive a car by thinking about it. If you do, you're a shitty driver. You drive a car by driving, and you can do it because you can do it. If you can. Maybe you are a shitty driver. Some people seem to be. But if you are, you are. And again, you're not doing it because of what you're thinking or what you're defining. You're doing it because you can do it. It's a city. It's a magical ability that's intrinsic in reality on the dimension of human karma, apparent human karma, that these kinds of functionalities can be present. You know, you can walk, you can talk, you can, you know, shake your head, you can close your eyes, you can think, you can argue, you know, you can interact, and you don't know how you're doing all those things. And if you're honest, you don't know what's happening when you're doing all those things either. So we're having a conversation, right? What's that mean? What's really happening here? How's that? What does that mean? What's happening when we have a conversation? You try and really pin it down. You know, for real. You can't do it. It's a miracle. It's miraculous. It's just this weird thing that can happen. You can seem to be doing it, but what it is and how it happens and what it means is always like, at the end of the day, is damned if I know.
Is what?
Damned if I know. I'll be damned if I know what it is.
I know.
I'm sorry?
You're still practicing though, like something like driving, for example.
Sure.
When you first get behind the car, you really like,
Sure, absolutely. Or let's take learning piano, because there's a real specific. You know, the first time you ever sat, assuming you've done this, the first time someone ever sits down at a piano, it's like, what? You know, it's like, you know, you touch it and it makes a funny noise. And, oh my God! And then you look at a movie on YouTube of someone playing some really intricate sonata, and you go, Jesus Christ, that's impossible. Boom, 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 you know. But you do it. So when you're practicing, what are you doing? You're experiencing, right? And you can't say what that is. You know, when you go to the piano and you extend your hand and you put your finger and touch a key and push it down. Yeah, but what is that? What is feeling the weight? What is pushing it down? What is extending your hand? What is hearing sound? Every aspect of that is inconceivable and miraculous. And it is engaged in irrationally. It's not, you may or may not be thinking all kinds of things. You may be thinking, oh, let's see, this is a B. No, that's a B, this is a C. Whatever, right, you're thinking all kinds of things, but the actual functioning, the actual behavior is called direct experiential engagement, or you can call it transcendental energy engagement or something if you want. It doesn't matter what you call it, because you can't pin down what it actually is anyway. So everything that happens is fundamentally irrational and a mystery, a miracle, essentially. You know, not in some highfalutin sense that you have to define into existence, but just in the literal sense that, Jesus Christ, this is so inconceivably intricate and amazing and astounding. And how is this? How can this do this? How can we have gotten here, be sitting in this room, be talking or thinking or whatever it is we're doing? How can that happen? You know, you can't answer that question. And not being able to, seeing that you really can't answer that question rather than being a loss is a gain. It's a huge expansion over the smallness of thinking you can answer the question. Well, how do you mean how we get here? We drove here and you walk in the damn room and you sit down and there's all this gaudy art around you, listen to this absurd bullshit, you know, and it's kind of boring, and then you go home and you have a beer. It's like, okay, cool. That's one way of describing it, but does that really pin down what it is and how it happens and what's going on here? And if you think it does, then I feel sorry for you. You know, not because that's not a perfectly viable way of interfacing with it, of approaching it, but because you're cutting yourself off from this astounding stew of lusciousness that the energy field actually consists of.
So I don't believe that I can pin it down, but when I'm thinking about learning, like finding maps, like finer and finer maps of learning, even something like say piano,
Sure.
You know, and then like in different ways that people have found to like structure experience so that it improves the likelihood that you'll get better at it.
Sure. Sure.
Like, there is a utility in that. And I feel like
Well, no, it's not a matter of no utility. But when you think of a map, how are you doing that? What is that? What is thinking of a map? What is a mental map? How's that happen? How do you think of it? How does thinking happen? How do you cross-coordinate a mental map with a physical functioning of moving your body or whatever? You know, how does that happen? And so every step of the way is inconceivable. It's not that it's not useful. Everything is useful. Anything is useful. But the question is, thinking you know what it is and making it small versus being with the open actuality that it actually is, in the way that it actually is what it actually is. And that's the difference between what's called in spirituality delusion and realization or enlightenment, which is no small thing, because the difference between the little world that is possible to think you inhabit and the inconceivable infinity that you actually inhabit is vast, especially in terms of the flavor of it, in terms of the quality of it, in terms of the lusciousness and vitality and freedom and beauty of it.
But once you do, then what? Once you do
Once you do what?
this, being aware of this miracle and seeing
Yeah.
that miracle, and
That's it.
then what?
More of the same.
What do you got?
More of the same.
What else?
And,
More of the same.
and paradoxically, you've always been nothing but aware of this miracle.
Right.
So it's all very paradoxical. Delusion doesn't actually exist because it's not like you actually go into the world you imagine when you imagine a small world. But it can feel like it. It's like brainwashing yourself. It's like hypnotizing yourself. You know, my life sucks. I'm a failure. I'm a loser. You know, and here's all this astounding beauty. It's here. It hasn't gone anywhere.
Right.
You can hypnotize yourself all you want to do that, but all this is still here.
So, yeah.
But you may not. But you know, it's kind of a perverse art form to try to shut all that out of your experience and shut it out from being able to access it and enjoy it, and, you know, open to the beauty of it.
Right.
And not just that, but open to the appreciating the functionality on that level. Because when you discover the way that the energy field actually works with itself, there's amazing miraculous properties that are inconceivable from a finite point of view.
Right.
And you discover you are this, you discover you have access to this, and it becomes a multi-dimensional participation that is astoundingly beautiful, functional, and
Magical.
effective, magical, very much magical. And what happens then is what happens then.
Yes, that's what. Yeah.
What's happening now?
Whatever happens.
You can't say what's happening now, so you can't say what's happening now.
Then.
Would you say that experience of seeing things as beautiful or luscious or feels vitality, those are just more flavors too, is that right?
If it was beautiful or was luscious or was vital, I'm using those words as jumping off points into what it really is, which cannot be said.
Right.
That includes all of those and is infinitely beyond all of those. They, you know, in the Vedas, they coin this wonderful word ananda, which is usually translated bliss. And it's usually said that, you know, in the Vedas it's said that reality is Satchidananda, which is often translated being, consciousness, bliss. And what's this bliss? The bliss is the astounding quality of this. It's not just being and consciousness in some mechanical, dull sense. So here's being in consciousness like a rock that's just, or a dog turd that's just like, okay, here it is, now what? It's not like that. There's an astounding, inconceivable meaningfulness. And you can say of beauty and functionality and inspiration and lusciousness and love, and I mean you can start throwing all these specific qualities at it, and it is all that, but it transcends all of those. It's more than all of those. It's what all of those really are. It itself is one thing, but it can't be said what it is. So that's just ways of approximating it or jumping off points to what it really is.
So would you say like beauty, bliss, vitality are closer approximations of
No.
recognition and misery?
No, absolutely not. any approximation is infinitely far from reactuality. There's no such thing as a closer approximation. A miss is as good as a mile. As soon as you're approximating, you're in samsara. You're in delusion. You're a crazy person. You're literally a crazy person. You know, I mean, I define a crazy person as not recognizing what actually exists and thinking, and what they think does exist doesn't actually exist, which is pretty much what we're talking about here. There's no such thing as despair. There's no such thing as failure. There's no such thing as beauty. There's no such, all of the idea that those exist are fantasies of people who are not very clever, who are partialized, who are dealing with things in terms of their own conceit, their own self-importance. Not in the bad sense. I mean, I'm not pointing fingers or anything, but I'm just saying it's a very limiting and limited mode of engagement that's unnecessary. You know, if one engages with it intentionally as an art form, that's fine, and that may be how it originally came. But be that as it may, you know, if to do it because you want to do it, that's fine. But to do it because you don't know any better is just sad. And so the point here is to try to point out and make available to whatever extent is possible the alternative, that there is a possibility of seeing beyond the insanity of all of this naming and knowing and qualifying and living in a world that's made of things and conditions that have a fixed finite relationship to each other in a fixed duration and a beginning and an end.
I guess I was a little confused because you seem to consistently use the same words or flavors to describe seeingfulness. You kept saying like beauty and vitality, so I was like, well, are those flavors more?
How about infinite darkness? How about pain without end? How about the impossibility of success? I could use those qualities too, and that captures it just as well.
Okay.
But because what it is as much that and as little that as it is beauty or vitality or joy.
Right.
You know, it's not it's not okay. The point of this is not to get an idea of what this is. The point is to see, do, look, feel. Right now you're feeling your experience. Just do that. Just feel your experience. And forget about what it is and what it looks like and whether it's this or that or whether it's diluted or just feel what is here. Feel the way that it is here. And just, you know, get some wow. Okay? Get some wow, and the wow does the rest. The wow does the work, and then you can answer these questions for yourself.
I guess the same voice that asks those questions is and the reason I'm asking is because I'm wondering like why it's worth it if it doesn't actually increase happiness. Because happiness is just another flavor of
It renders happiness irrelevant. Completely. Which you could say is the true happiness. So that's what liberation means. You become liberated from all these partialities without having any of them be canceled out. It's not like happiness stops, but it becomes unimportant. What's important cannot be said. And anything that can be said is just a partial aspect of what's important. So it comes with. Everything comes with reality. But reality is beyond everything, to the extent that you're thinking there's an everything. So when you make a laundry list of qualities, it's not that, but they're not canceled out. It's not like happiness stops. On the contrary, you might find that happiness actually kind of increases a bit. But it's not about that. That's not the point. You know, what this is utterly and completely beyond anything you can and have ever and can possibly imagine or conceive of. But it doesn't cancel that out or negate it. But it still is absolutely beyond it. And everything that you have imagined and can think of is in actuality this that is beyond it, that is right here, right now, and that has always been right here, right now, and nothing other than it is right here, right now. And it's what you are, and it's what this is. So it's just, you know, and it is the case that that's the case, so it's possible to notice that that's the case. And then you get to
Wow.
enjoy it.
You get to wow.
You get to it's really just about feeling life. You know, just feel, here this is, just feel it. And you already are. So just like open the floodgates, just like feel it. And when you feel it, right away you're going to go to wow. If you're not going to wow, you're not feeling it. I mean, you doesn't have to be the word wow or the thought wow, but the quality of wow.
You spoke about seeing auras in people. So how does one cultivate that?
Just by trying, by exploring and see what it is. You know, the easiest way to do that is feel flavors. You know, feel the flavor of people. You know, and we all do this all the time. You know, you walk into a room and you check people out and you just get a hit on them, what they're like. You know, someone you go like, oh God, that person creeps me out. Another person you go, God, I really like this person. And it's not necessarily just about what they look like.
Yeah.
It's more than that. There's a flavor or something. And so you can use that as your jumping off point, and then just open to it and see what you can find. You know, and not just people. I mean, this applies to everything and anything. You know, anything that is manifest is a presentation of you could say a subtle energy resonance that is a pure flavor. It's like a symphony. It's like a piece of music. Everything, anything. You know, a pebble, a grain of sand. You know, a raindrop. Each one is a distinct, universe or symphony of flavor, and this is palpable. It's feelable. You know, simply by letting yourself discover that, and it's usually the limitation of this kind of thing is we're not interested because we think it's bullshit or hogwash or it's impossible or or worse yet, you think you know what it is and you think you think you're already doing it, but to just sort of really let go and just enjoy the flavor of what is present. And you can be very specific with that. You can take a very specific presence and really just sort of drink it in, and its flavor and its quality, and just the way it makes you feel, and in any way whatsoever. And you'll discover that your experiential field is never ending, infinite spectrum and resource of all of these flavors, and there's no limit to how rich they are and how deep they are and how much information, you could say information dense it is. And it's not hidden. It's not, it's really just letting yourself, noticing that you can do it and are doing it, and then you can and are.
Right. Yeah. So it's kind of like if the way the mother tells the child, see this, see this, see this, maybe that's why we can see, not that there's anything inherently more obvious about light So if moms were telling kids, "Oh, you feel that aura? Feel that aura?"
Yeah,
Maybe
absolutely.
kids will grow up feeling aura.
Sure. I mean, all of this defining and all that is historically, originally, basically brainwashing of
Yeah.
programming.
Right.
We're programmed by the behavior of our parents. We're programmed by the semantic system of our language structures, different nouns and verbs and so on and so forth, conditions us to approach our experience in those terms. Um, all of which is potentially some degree of a limitation, or at least let's say a bias.
Bias.
Whereas all of which is fine.
Yeah.
So all of that is fine, but there's more than that.
There's more than
Outside the lines. You can color inside the lines, but there's something outside the lines too. And if you only let yourself be inside the lines, then you're cutting yourself off from noticing and appreciating, having access to, or let's say enjoyment of what you're excluding.
and we can keep pushing those lines
Absolutely.
outward more.
No limit.
And not just as individuals, but as a race.
Yeah,
as a species.
Absolutely, no limit. But as far as anyone knows, you alone exist. So there may well be races, and there may well be group consciousness and group karma and all these various things, but that's all just ideas that can occur within your experience, and that's the actuality.
Yeah.
So in all of this, it's very important to keep working with actuality, to stay with the presence of your experiential field, because it's so easy to leap off into abstractions and hold them as being actual. It's best to approach, in practical terms, approach your life as, oh, thank you so much. Consider it. It's best to approach your life very much as if it's a dream. Just everything is just here because you're dreaming it. And then you don't need to worry about philosophically whether it's actually there or not.
Right.
And you may interact with it as if it was there, but that's not important. There's a difference between interacting with it and believing, being stuck in the belief of oh, this is really here, and all these people really are here.
Yeah.
I don't know if you all are here or not.
Yeah.
I see you, but I could go to sleep at night and I'll dream and I'll be seeing you again, or whoever. Right? And what happens when I wake up, they disappear. When I go to sleep, you disappear. Right?
Yeah.
Which is real. I mean, you can't say. And so that kind of looseness and ease with it, it's a guard against getting stuck into ossifying it, holding it as being a certain way, because you can't know. And thanks so much. And when you do that, you're drifting off into fantasy. Which is fine, but if you drift off into fantasy and don't recognize it's fantasy, then you're just a crazy person and you're stuck there. You can get stuck. I mean, you're never actually stuck.
Right.
But so it feels stuck. Yeah. All of this is basically about selfishness. To take advantage of what you can because you can. It's available, so be selfish and grab it.
Yeah.
You don't have to. Be a hedonist. Enjoy this lusciousness that is it's here. Because there's no downside. There's no reason not to.
It seems dangerously close to being insane. Isn't it?
Well, it seems like that.
It might actually be
It
insanity.
might be
But again, this is insanity is definable by a frame of reference.
Right.
If you define sanity as conforming to some conformist consensus reality, then that's an argument, right? You can argue that that's what sanity is. I define sanity as relating to what is, knowing what is, and holding what is to be what is, and what it doesn't exist, not holding it to be existent, except in the way that it is. So, for example, it's a matter of just being an absolute empiricist, absolutely empirical. So what can I know? What can I can know is the presence of my experiential field, this experiential field. What else can I know? Nothing.
Nothing.
So I can have hypotheses. Maybe you exist. Maybe the world exists, but I can't know it.
You can't know it.
So when I have the hypothesis, then I know that there's an idea present of whatever, say that the world exists. And so then so there's that idea, and I know that that idea is actual. And that idea exists in the context of the actuality of the experiential field. So that's sanity. And being with everything the way it actually is, rather than attributing an actuality to it that it doesn't actually have. So an idea is an idea, an imagination is a fantasy, a sensory experience is a sensory experience, and so on and so forth. And to be with each of these as they actually are, experientially, empirically.
Yeah.
And that gives a good reality check. Because then you're with what is real, you're with what is actual, undeniably. It's self-evident, I would argue, let's say, it's self-evident and that the only findable actuality is the presence of the experiential field.
Right.
So good, you have a starting point.
Right.
This actually is. You can't say what is means.
Yeah.
What is, you can't say it is compared to some non-is, because you can't find any non-is to compare it to.
Right.
Or you can find that this is here, right? So great, okay, cool. So now I have a kind of a so let me see, can I augment that? Can I add to that? Is there anything else?
Yeah.
And so on. And then you look for yourself and you see what you find, and remember to keep perspective of the actuality of experience. And to me, that seems more like sanity than insanity, even if it's not what most people are doing.
Fine.
And even if someone is following a consensus reality and insisting that things are a certain way, and anyone that disagrees with them must be nuts.
Right.
I think they're nuts to say that.
Right. But what I meant by insanity is like if you start going really into that wow. No, what is left? You just jump off a cliff or something. I mean, that's maybe. Yeah, I know. It's like.
But some people do. Some people do jump. Well, some people do.
Why bother with this limited boxes?
Well, that's a good point. And some people don't. Some people head off into the hills. Some people become street people.
That's it.
Some people become junkies.
But
some people kill themselves. But you don't have to.
But you don't have to.
Because when you look at this closely, you discover you don't actually gain or lose anything by following any particular course of action.
Right.
So all you do is follow your own nature. And that's not an abstraction. You're already doing that.
Yeah.
You like what you like, and you go where you go, and you go towards what feels good, and you go away from what doesn't feel good, and that sort of takes care of itself.
Right. But with that,
maybe you will jump off a cliff. Some people do.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's like the what was that? Chopping wood, that thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Chop wood, carry water.
Yeah.
Do you feel though that say a concern for ideas around collective well-being, that just becomes irrelevant because
you might feel if you feel it. If you feel it, you feel it. But if you feel it, then you feel it as an idea that you have around collective well-being. You might be an altruist. You might not be an altruist. You might become Scrooge and say, "Oh, fuck everything. Screw you. I'm going to go get a beer," or whatever. But but
well, but it's just the way that you frame it. It does come off as like, oh yeah, whatever you can immediately sense that.
Right.
But there's some.
If you immediately sense altruism, then that's there. If you immediately sense a joy of communication or communion, then that's there. Whatever. Maybe, or it's not. Maybe it's not there. Maybe you're an autistic person or something.
It may not be you're not immediately aware, but you can come into awareness of it.
Sure.
Like, for example, experiences of people in other parts of the world. Like,
absolutely. If that happens, then that happens.
Yeah.
Nothing is excluded.
Right. So it's not necessarily just your immediate vicinity.
Nothing's implied. So there's no implication of this. It's just a reality check. There's no implication of, there's a reality check, so discard all this stuff. It's not like that. It's just look at what things actually are. You know, take an inventory of your experience relative to your experience. What is your experience? What are your ideas? And your ideas are ideas that occur within your experience. You know, you see, so I see you. When I say I see you, the words I see you means the presence of a certain color and shape and texture and blah, 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 right? And I can think of that as maybe that's another person. Maybe it's a female, so on and so forth, and maybe all these other things. But all of those maybes are ideas that are present within the experiential field simultaneously with the vision shape being present in the experiential field, simultaneously with any other feelings or associations or memories being present within the experiential field, and that's all here.
Mm.
But it is what it is. It's that, and then and so it's a kind of an inventory, just an unbiased, neutral inventory of what's actually present, including thoughts, feelings, fantasies, memories.
Yes, there's absolutely no evaluation.
Right, and yet there may no, but it doesn't. But valuation is not negated or canceled because valuation may be present as an urge or a motivation or a thought or whatever, what have you, or not. And then you can look at that in terms of what it actually is, rather than being confused by having a misproportionate sense of what matters and what doesn't. So when you see the actual proportion of things in terms of your experience, you can sort out for yourself more neutrally the importance of things.
What do you mean you can sort out more neutrally the importance?
It's possible to get when you're lost in thoughts and you're interpreting thoughts as being things and you're confused about it. It's easy to get let's say a skewed or potentially skewed sense of priorities or importance. You know, this matters because it should matter, or it matters because it seems to matter to other people, and I kind of want it to matter to me because I want them to like me, or whatever. So wanting people to like you is fine, but that's a separate thing than whether this matters. So that's something else in your inventory. I want people to like me. I feel an urge to behave in a certain way so that I don't offend people or so they like me. And I think this and so you're just like making a list, you might say, although not like literally or rationally. It's not analytical. It's just a feeling sense. You know, you're when you begin to play with this stuff, your intelligence just sees it. Just sees the array, and you don't even need to sort it out. It's pre-sorted because it is what it is.
So it's sort of like throwing out your moral compass in a way or throwing out having to orient to a certain point on the compass, right?
Yeah.
You just go, okay, well this is.
Well, you see, your moral compass is there. What is the moral compass? The moral compass is a certain sets of feelings, certain motivations that have their own complexity and maybe inconsistency. Maybe you kind of have certain urges and you have certain other urges that are not exactly consonant with those or don't actually work well. And it's like, okay, cool. Well, that's there. That's interesting. I mean, you know, you'll probably discover that you're a mess. You'll probably discover that you're a very complex system and not particularly consistent or, you know, or simplistically aligned. Well, yeah, just to see it. Yeah, it's not like you have to live up to anything.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, a lot of this is what ordinarily happens in maturing, and in fact, you know, this yoga that I call this yoga, it's nothing other than what is already always happening. Life is yoga. Life is the process of reality being with itself and learning itself. So this process is learning about itself. So you could call it that, exploring itself. You could call it. So this process is just making that more efficient by noticing that that's what it is and getting down to the most radical, raw, direct aspect of that, rather than the normal human mode, which is more sort of bumbling along and being confused. And life is still exploring itself and learning about it, but it's kind of in all these complex eddies and backwaters of delusion and confusion. Whereas when you just begin to relate to the energy present field as an energy present field that is with itself, because the energy presence field is here, and what is with it, what you are, what is seeing it, is an energy presence field. So it's the same thing meeting itself. It's like a snake eating its tail. And when you see that, you're with it very, very radically, very intimately, very fundamentally, is what it actually is. And so it's much more direct. And in my experience, it becomes more efficient, because getting caught up in all these eddies of delusion and confusion and craziness, it's a normal human mode. Wisdom can develop, but it develops less rapidly, perhaps, or less efficiently, seemingly. That's my argument, anyway.
But there is a sort of morality that goes with this.
Sure.
We will not hurt other people. We will not steal or murder or do.
Well, maybe.
Which kind of is counterproductive to this hedonistic, there's only me attitude.
I don't think so. I think they're one and the same. There's only me is not an attitude. It's a
not an
fact.
attitude, but
It's not there's only me, there's only this.
that's right.
And this is, and I am this.
And I am this, but I am this does mean there's also something that says I will respect Julian as what I perceive her to be.
Well, if there is something that's like that, then there is.
And
I mean, in my case, there is. I'm a really nice guy, and I'm not a nice guy because I feel like I should be. I'm a nice guy because I am. I just happen to be.
that was my whole point.
I could be an asshole. I mean, I could be out, beating up drunks in the alley and stealing their beer or something. I don't know.
But that is also an option. I mean, it's not like that doesn't exist in your reality.
I'm sorry? What doesn't?
There's the fact that you're a nice guy
Mm-hmm.
has a place in who you are.
Oh, sure, absolutely.
And it's nothing to do with whether you're realized or not, or whether you're
Oh, absolutely.
in a situation.
Absolutely.
So there is something that applies to us that is not necessarily some of our experience. Well, maybe it is the same.
I would say
I'm not sure.
I would say it's the nature of the crystal energy system that you are. An individual is like an energy flower.
Yeah.
It has an absolute unique structure and orientation and flavor, you could say, infinite complexity. And everything about a person is like a harmonic of that. So the way your body tends to look and tends to function, the way your personality tends to look and function, the way your motivations and so on and so forth, is all just aspects of that energy system. And you are that. When you God knows what, but you're at least that from the time you're born. If you're not that in some eternal sense, who knows? But at any rate, so this structure that this you-ness that is you are, and every aspect of you, including your own inconsistencies and your own internal conflicts, are just harmonics of that intrinsic you-ness, that energy structure. And it certainly can include moral compass and various other things and all that. But there's no way of predicting a priori what it does exclude or exclude or whatever. It might include, people are complex. People are the different possible energy flavors are have an infinitely broad spectrum. And people have it's superficial and trite to say people have a dark side, for example, but people do, and some people do more than others. and that's there too, and that's part of the energy matrix or what have you.
And that's subject to change.
Of course, everything is it is what it is, and it does what it does in accordance with what it is. And so this is not. This is all just a reality check. This is not a matter of change this or do this or don't do this. This is just look and see what is here.
Yeah.
And look and see what is here in the most unbiased, objective, fundamental sense. And what you discover may be profound, to say the least, and may have fabulous implications in all sorts of ways, to say the least.
Yes. So this is it.
This is it. That's the truth.
That's it.
And can you even say that you can experientiality objective or unbiased? I mean, if you're saying that
You are already. You already are.
well, if everybody has a very particular energy flowering
Sure.
field and perceptual apparatus, or even like their eyes are different.
Yeah, of course. Everything.
So then,
And not just physically, and personality and energy flavors and motivations and I mean whatever.
So how is it that what you're experiencing can ever be objective?
Well, it's objective because it is objectively that. It's not objective as opposed to some subjective. The subjective is objective too. Objective simply means it is actual. It's a matter of seeing what is actual and separating that off from what is not actual as, or the way in which things are actual. So fantasies are actual fantasy. But actual fantasies are not actual sensory realities. Actual thoughts are not either fantasies or reality. I mean, in other words, it's sort of parsing what is actually present and the way it's actually present.
Yeah,
So you don't get cross confused and suppose that your fantasies, your imagination is physically actual, or vice versa.
Right.
And you're just sort of seeing what is actually here in the way that it is actually here.
Right. And then, but when you mean objective, you mean just from the perceptual, like your sense.
Your experience, but that's all. But that's all you have.
Not presuming any consistency whatsoever.
No, of course not, because that's all you have. You don't even know if other people exist for a fact. I mean, you don't know. I'm not saying they don't, but I'm saying you can't know.
You can't know.
All you can know is what you do know. So, like what you know of me, I'm a sound you hear. You hear the sounds that seem to come from me. You see the shapes of my body, and you see my movements, and you may experience ideas or not that you seem to associate with some words that I'm saying, and you may have experienced emotions or whatever that seems to be associated with all of that. And as far as you know, that's me.
Right.
You could be dreaming me, and that's what I would be in this dream the same way. I would. And when you go to sleep, I disappear. Just like the people you dreamed about last night disappeared when you woke up. What can you know about that? Nothing, other than just it happens. I close my eyes and the world disappears. That's not a theory, that's a fact. I open my eyes, the world appears. And I don't know what the world's going to look like. If I'm dreaming and I open my eyes, who knows what it's going to look like?
In the next moment.
Yeah, or in the next moment, who knows? Who knows what okay, here's another interesting thing to look at experience. You don't know what you're going to experience in the next instant. You don't know what your eyes are going to light on. You don't know what thoughts are going to happen to pop into your head. You don't know what chain of association and memory is going to pop into your head. You don't know. So you're in a state of continually being surprised. And continually the unexpected is just, wow. It's, always. And what you do is essentially dance with that.
Right.
Always. You're always dancing with your own energy, dancing with the energy that appears as the experiential qualities that show up in your experiential field. Whether they're sensory or mental or however you want to classify them, ultimately they're all the same. Ultimately they're all apparitional qualities. And at the end of the day, there's no basis, you can't say what they are, because you don't know what vision means. So the light is present in your field of vision. Thought is present in your field of mind. What does that mean? What is thought? What is light? Who knows? It's just a miraculous presence that is as it is. But it's actual. Well, sure. Death has to be this. Whatever this is, it has to be death. Like, are you alive now?
I am of a
What-
quality that I would label alive.
Yeah, well, true, but well, but labeling, label schmabel.
Labels.
You can label anything you want.
Yeah. Yeah.
The point is, what does that even mean? I mean, death is what happens. Death is two things. Death is one thing when you die, and death is something else when someone else dies. It's easy to know about what someone else dies. They stop moving and they start smelling and so on and so forth. But what happens when you die, it's going to happen within your experiential field, isn't it?
Mm.
So it will be an experience.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the day, that's what's
all there
happening
is.
now.
No.
So death will be what's happening now.
There is no death.
Is there life?
Sorry?
Is there life?
Is there life?
No, that's
Yeah. What is it? Is this life?
that's right.
What is it? What is this? What is this?
Would you consider interaction to be an abstraction?
Definitely not. Holding interaction to be interaction is an abstraction.
Mm. Ah.
But the actuality of interaction is energy presence, dynamic energy presence. But you can't know, you see, holding interaction to be interaction is a fantasy.
Mm.
The actuality of interaction is energy presence, and you can't know what it is.
Mm.
You can't know that interaction actually is interaction, actually conforms to what something you might define as being what an interaction would be defined as. For example, you can interact with a dragon in your dreams that's chasing you, or that you're riding or something, and yet you wake up and you know, well, gee, there was no dragon there, as far as I know. So was it an interaction or not? Can you interact with yourself? Am I interacting with myself when I daydream? Am I interacting with myself when I think? Maybe, why not? But the notion interaction is a little heavy-handed and, constraining in terms of holding it to actually be an interaction as opposed to something that's not an interaction.
Mm.
I mean, everything could be said to be subtle energy interacting with itself,
Mm.
in the sense of what experience is subtle energy presence. What is experienced is subtle energy presence. And so this, whatever that is, interfacing with itself apparently, is any and all experience is that. So you could say there's nothing but interaction. Or you could say it's not really an interaction because it's just subtle energy exploring itself. So it's a zero-sum game. Nothing's really happening.
Mm.
It's like God looking at its face in a mirror.
Mm-hmm.
Is anything happening when that happens? Well, everything's happening because there's nothing else happening. But is it a happening?
Mm.
So again, holding it to be a happening or not a happening is trying to pin it down. It's just this that is here in the way that it is here, and you can't answer those questions.
Still struggling. What do you do with it once you get it?
Well, you don't need to worry about it. What do you do with it when you haven't got it?
Yeah.
What do you do with it now? Whatever you are doing.
Yeah.
And you can't even say what that is.
Yeah.
So it's not like it's a question you can answer.
You're right.
So why ask it?
Why ask it? Why bother? Yeah. Just, not even just. So is there a book on this? Have you written anything?
I wrote a book. I don't know if it's on anything.
It's on, it's on the shelf.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
But
mean,
I will not be
it's
here
it's
tomorrow.
very simple. There's nothing you need to study or read or remember. Just feel your experience and let it show you what it is.
Right.
And remember that it's not what you think it is. It's more than you think it is. And so just feel that moreness.
Right.
And
The
that's
moreness.
always available. That's always available. I have a formula, more and other. Everything is more and other than you think it is,
Ah,
or more and other than it seems to be at first.
yeah.
So you just, anything whatsoever, anywhere, in the sense field or in a thought or anything whatsoever, just this that is here is more and other than it seems to be. And you can go into that. You can
Yeah.
discover that
Yeah.
directly. This is not
Right.
an abstraction or a
That's right.
theory.
Right.
It's the very nature of experience that it opens to itself.
Right.
When you're with anything, what happens? You go into it deeper.
Yeah.
And so experience reveals itself simply by this principle of more and other.
More and other.
And it's just a matter of noticing that that happens.
Yeah.
Noticing that when you're with something, it morphs, it starts changing. You go into it, you go into other dimensions. And just notice that that's what it is. That's what happens. That's
Did
the
you
way
say
it is.
morphs or more?
I said morphs.
Also,
But
you
more-
talked
more.
and other.
Yeah, more and other
more and
morphs.
Yeah.
I'm sure the etymology of these words is entangled, and Kabbalists can derive all sorts of elaborate theories out of it all.
Uh,
There's nothing to study, really. This is not about theory.
Yeah.
This is about enjoying
I
experience,
just
feeling.
want to somehow hold on to it, I guess.
Yeah.
That's
But
the.
you don't need to hold on to it because you can't
Hold-
lose it. The experience can't go away. You can't make it
But
go
I
away
might
if you want
forget.
to.
I might forget.
But even if you get it, it's still here. It still is the way it is.
Yeah. I want to remember. I want to bottle it.
Yeah, there's a website.
You can go to my website, and there's probably more
nothing
than
there.
there's more than 1,000 hours of audio. I recorded all these talks get recorded,
Okay.
and they're all posted on the website available for free, and you can listen to them anytime
Yeah.
you want.
Yeah.
So there really
You
is
can make
more
yourself
and
dizzy as
There's
dizzy
more
as shit.
another.
Yeah, more another for
More
days.
another. And there's a URL associated with it.
That's true. There is actually a book, but I'm not sure what it's about.
That's good.
I don't recommend the book, although it is available. I recommend reading the book of your own life and read it by Braille.
Right.
Read it by Braille.
Read it by Braille. I like that.
But in terms of transmission, like you talked about transmission before, we get a transmission here, we get a transmission through the videos, but not the book.
No? You don't get a transmission through the book? What's transmission? Is there a transmission here that's not somewhere else? Is there transmission somewhere else that's not here? What's transmission?
We think so, right? We think that it is somewhere else always, or somebody, or some energy which is more or whatever.
Sure. I mean, that's
Yeah.
but that's a thought.
That's
And so
thought.
that's a thought that can be there.
Yeah,
A thought can be, you can think anything.
yeah, you can think anything.
And there it is as a thought.
Yeah.
It's just more of the same stuff we're already made of, right? So
Yeah.
hey, transmit
Nothing's
to
added,
yourself.
nothing, yeah. This is,
Yeah, yeah.
what transmits is radiant presence.
Radiant presence.
What transmits is this that is here.
Mm.
There's no people or circumstances involved that are of any importance. They just appear, come and go as
Yeah.
conveniences.
But there's degrees of attunement too.
Sure, but the degrees of attunement or your karma has nothing to do with anything else. It's all about you. So the transmission is ultimately about and from you. Because you are this. And this is what the transmission comes from. Whether it looks like some particular person or circumstances is like livening up the transmission, is still all about you.
Mm.
Not necessarily you as in deliberately something you're doing or not doing consciously, but about what you really are, which is your own surfing your energy in the moment. And when your life consists of you learning to do that better.
Mm.
And there's no limit to how much better you can learn to
get.
do it. And there's no limit to how fast you can learn to do it really better. And so when it seems like there's a lot of transmission going on, all it really is you're learning to surf your own energy faster. And so you notice that. But it's still also all about you.
And how do
Or in
you?
my case, it's all about me.
Yeah. But how do you get faster?
By doing it.
By doing it.
You discover the infinite rapidity of the moment. There's nothing faster than what's already happening. So you have access to complete fastness because here it is.
Here it is.
And again, you just notice that. You notice it. You notice how how fast and how intelligent and how inconceivably information dense the present moment is. Yeah. I mean, just just the qualities that are present experientially on every level.
Yeah.
That's a good expression. That, it's its own gravity.
Information dense, and then we're so dense we don't see all that information most of the time.
But even not seeing it is an incredibly active creative act.
Exactly.
Because to not see it, that means is the positive erection of an alternative to that, and holding it, and you have to keep maintaining that moment by moment and recreating it moment by moment in your imagination.
Right.
And that's why, people think life is so exhausting. That's why you get to the end of the day and you get into bed and you go, oh, thank God. Because it's so much work holding up this fabrication of fantasy that we maintain, that basically we use to cause ourselves pain and suffering. And it's a lot of work to do. So you get to bed at night, or God, I really need a drink, or God, I really need some smoke, or I really need whatever. I really need to sleep. I just gotta get out of here.
Yeah.
Because it's so much work to maintain this castle of bullshit. Yeah. I mean, enlightenment, reality is easy. It does itself.
Yeah.
Delusion is what's hard. Delusion, you have to bust your ass. No, really. I mean, it's it's a lot of work to try to be someone, to hold in your mind, to convince yourself you're being someone, and then to try and convince yourself you're doing it well, or be coming down on yourself because you're not doing it well, but you should be doing it better.
That's all hard
And
work.
that's the whole soap opera, the whole internal soap opera of self-assessment and self-loathing and all of that.
Right.
It's a pain in the ass. It's a lot of work, and it's totally unnecessary. You drop all that, and what do you have? The same thing you had if you didn't drop it, just whatever's here.
Whatever's here.
So why do all that?
Yeah.
And you don't actually get anything from it, but a lot of confusion and suffering. So what's the point? Yeah, that's my opinion.
Yeah. Right now, subject to whatever. Very nice.
Just curious what you make of the Tibetan Book of the Dead.
It's wonderful. It's basically an over elaborated version of what we're talking about tonight. According to the Tibetan Book of the Dead, after death you discover there's nothing, just presence, and then various qualities begin to appear. And the one thing that the Tibetan Book of the Dead emphasizes over and over is don't make anything particular the qualities of it. They're just apparitions. And that's what we're talking about here. To think you know what anything is to basically erect a hell.
Right.
To erect a samsara, to erect a frame of psychosis that will just torment you. Nothing is gained by pretending to know what things are. When you acknowledge it, you don't actually know what they are, which is easy to do because it's in fact the case. You can't know what anything is. You can't pin it down ultimately. And then you're off the hook. There may or may not be apparitions, but who gives a shit, because it doesn't mean anything. There's just this presence that is here, and so apparitions take care of themselves or not. They appear or they don't. And then you're free. You're liberated because it's not about you. It's not about you having to do anything or needing or not do anything or succeed at anything or avoid failure or win friends and influence people or anything. It's just this is here and there's a bunch of weird shit appearing. And that's and period. End of story. And all the rest of the Tibetan Book of the Dead is. And if you fail at that, then you will get into a deeper realm of delusion, you know. And so don't take that seriously. And if you fail at that, then you get into and then you finally get incarnated into human existence, which of course is the lowest level of hell. And so, and the remedy, even from the lowest level of hell, the remedy is always the same as at the very top level, which is it's just apparitions. It has nothing to do with anything. It takes care of it. It's doing itself. There's no implication. It's just weird shit appearing. And can you contest that?
You can't contest it. But if you choose to do something, if you choose to
do something, that's just more something appearing. The choice appears, and the seeming doing appears. If you seem to have a body, that appears.
But then, in order to do that, what you have chosen, you would need to define it or limit it in certain ways so that you can do whatever you have chosen to do.
Sure, all of that, but all that's a fantasy.
Yeah.
Because even if you're doing, you're not really doing.
Let's say surgery. I'm doing surgery. I better define.
Well,
right?
but if you're defining surgery as surgery, then you're imagining it. Surgery isn't surgery. Surgery is the apparition of various energy patterns spontaneously appearing. When the surgeon walks into the operating theater, nothing's happening. The operating theater appears and moves towards them. You know, when they put their gloves on, you know, they see these hands extending and they see gloves being put on, and they may even feel the presence of a volition to put the hands out and to put the gloves on, but that's just appearing. Everything just appears. Action appears, behavior appears, functioning appears. What's doing it? You know, and what's it going to? It's just apparition leads to more apparition, leads to more apparition, leads to more apparition forever and ever, and never amounts to anything. I mean, everything that's appeared, what's it amount to? What appearing now is going to amount to? So it's just a reality check of the way everything happens. Everything does itself. I can say, no, but I'm here and I have these desires and these motivations and choices, and I'm thinking about things and worrying about things. But all that appears, but that's doing itself. That's not here because I decided to put it here. I don't have to put my body here. It just shows up. I don't have to put my personality here. It just shows up. I don't have to put my biases and my tastes here. They just show up. I don't have to put my motivations here. They just show up. I'm not doing them.
But there seems to be a consequence, right? Something leading to something else.
That's a theory. If you can suppose there's cause and effect. In a dream, you can get into a car and take the key out of your pocket and put it in and twist it and the car starts.
Right.
Did the key start the car in the dream? It looked as if it did, but it just appeared. It appeared. You know, the cause and effect is a theory. It's an abstraction.
It's an abstraction.
When you look at, again, it's a reality check of looking at what experience is, all you find is miraculous presence, miraculous apparition. And the fact that certain patternings of experience seem to more or less loosely be associated with certain precursors and results.
Right.
You can erect all sorts of theories on the basis of that, but the fact is just the apparition, and the apparition is always instantaneous. So it could be a fault of memory.
It could be.
The whole past, the entire past history could be a projection from the present moment, for example. Who knows? You can't prove it's not. That's another theory. That's another theory. You know, the history is a virtual projection that creates itself in real time. Maybe. Or maybe there's cause and effect, and history extends physically throughout billions of years where everything impacts on everything else. Maybe. But you can't, it doesn't actually resolve to being that. When you look, the only thing you can look at is this, and this is instantaneous, so there's no duration.
And gone.
There is no this moving. It seems as if it's this moving into that. But there's no, this disappears and that appears, and as soon as that appears, it already disappears. There's no time that it's actually here. The appearing is the disappearing. It's very weird and slippery.
Yeah.
So where's causality? You know, I mean, it's a nice notion. It's a pretty story. It's simply anything that in several thousand years, if assuming humans persist in their folly,
Yeah.
in several thousand years, science will have transcended causality in any simple sense. I bet you anything. I bet you there'll be all sorts of trans-temporal interaction, and so I think that's already starting, just in terms of physics, for example. So, but it's all more theories. And then a few more thousand years past that, all that'll be hogwash.
Yeah. That's
But this that is here is the way it is
yeah,
eternally.
that's indisputable, and
Yeah.
it's just there.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah. That's,
But because this is here, it's actual, so you can explore it.
yeah.
And that's all. The only point is, and there's no limit to how deeply and intelligent you can explore it. Just let yourself feel what's here, and remember that it's not what you think it is. Let yourself feel it and discover, wow, this is surprising. This is a whole different thing going on here than I knew.
Yeah.
And you will discover that forever, because that's what there is to discover. And on that note, we have to close tonight.
Beautiful.
Thank you all for joining me.
Thank you very much.